For people who only know you as the joyful, witty woman on stage, can you take us back to the early years before the books, when you had such fear, such a grip of fear on your life that you couldn't even leave the house?
Well, I sure can, because you never forget the hardest times in your life.
Right.
Because they came with some of the greatest insights that you get. And so you
100%.
hang on to those two memories. Yes, it was dark. Yes, it was hard. Yes, I made my way through and was set free.
But you were 20, 21, you barely married, right?
Barely married. I married at 17.
Okay.
And then I
had a baby.
Had my first baby at 20.
Okay.
And then I became agoraphobic.
And do you know what pushed you into that place?
Well, it was the level of anxiety I was carrying that I didn't know how to deal with. I didn't have any tools or insight. I wasn't walking in my faith, but I knew about faith. My mother was a woman of faith, but I had not yet figured out that that was what my life needed.
Right.
And I was getting in a very dark and hard place, and I began to withdraw from society. I withdrew into my home, and then I withdrew into my bedroom.
What were you doing with your marriage and your baby?
Well, they were all on hold.
Oh my gosh, how do you do that?
Be with you soon.
How do you put a baby on hold?
Well, the baby wasn't on hold,
Right, I'm
because he
teasing.
was right there with me. But my husband got relief by going to work, because dealing with me was not easy. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what I wanted. I was in terrible emotional pain. And then it led to a lot of physical challenges.
Oh my gosh, that's quite the story. And I mean, then, your life goes on to be the complete opposite of that. You're on stages all over the world, and you started where you couldn't even leave your bedroom. I wonder, when I think about that, I wonder, what did the agoraphobia, the anxiety, teach you?
Oh, it taught me a lot. First of all, to quit blaming other people and situations for the condition I was in.
That's a
that
big
I was
one.
going to have to take responsibility for myself, and I would have to take responsibility before my God. And I can remember the day that I cried out from the very depths of me, Lord, I'll do whatever you ask of me. And immediately I heard in my heart, I didn't hear a audible this way. I heard a inside voice say, make your bed. And I thought,
Make your bed.
yeah. And I said, I just told the Lord I'd do anything he asked me to. And when I heard make your bed, I thought, how's that going to help anything? Make my bed? And I was arguing, and then it hit me. Oh, I just said I would do whatever you asked. And you seem to be asking me to do something, but it seems so unreasonable.
Make my bed, the only place that's safe to me.
Yeah, I said, besides, I'm in it.
Everybody feels anxietous today, it seems. People are on medicine, all kinds of, we do everything we can to manage anxiety today. And yet, when you were 20, people probably weren't talking about it very much.
No.
You I assume you felt completely alone in what you were feeling.
Absolutely. I didn't know anyone else who was having anxiety attacks. I didn't even know my symptoms had names. So I was just, I thought it was about me, the worst part of me, but I didn't know what to do about any of that. And no one who cared for me seemed to have any answers.
I'm so sad for that girl, that young girl with a little baby in a town without her mom. I just grieve for that girl so alone in this craziness that was happening to you and you didn't have a name for it, you didn't have anybody helping you through it. If you, and I know you're very culturally aware and you minister to and talk to women and have for a lot of years these days. But if you think about that time in your life, that intense anxiety, if you could go back and talk to that young woman at 20, 21, in that, you were like trapped in it, what would you say to her?
I would say, hold on, Jesus is near. And he had a plan, and his plan, I couldn't imagine that he had a plan for me, as broken and non-functional as I was. What plan could possibly work? And why would we start at making the bed?
Right.
But to make a bed, you have to get out of it.
And that is the point. Let's take that just one little moment there. And I would like you to think about all the people who might be watching this show, who feel trapped in anxiety, trapped in worry, don't know how to get out. Tell me what you would say to them.
I would say, I know how it feels, first of all, and because we think we're all alone. We've made ourselves, in many ways, exceptional, while not even feeling average.
Right.
And so there's such a conflict within us. And then we think other people should be doing something for us, when it is within us the ability, because of Christ, and in him all things are possible. But we have to understand how to integrate the Word of God. And that counsel then becomes life for us. It gives us a path, and that path points us toward hope. And I couldn't see any light. All I could see was my darkness. And so when he spoke to me and I obeyed and made my bed, that was the beginning of seeing a path. I didn't see it immediately. I had to keep obeying the next step and the next step.
Had you ever had God speak to you before then?
No, I'd never asked anything of him like that. I had never requested. I had cried out, fix it.
Yeah. And so, you and I have had some fabulous conversations in the last few months. And I believe you told me that there was a woman who would call you on the phone. And I just love that even in your just worst of times, brokenness of spirit, you pushed back on her.
I did.
Tell me about her and what she did for you.
Well, her name was Rose, and I met her over the phone because someone, I think it was a neighbor in a conversation, had said, why don't you talk to Rose? And Rose had a heart of compassion. She didn't have experience with the condition I was in, but she had a grip on the Word of God.
Oh, wow.
And so she kept nudging me to move in closer to what the Lord had to say. And she would call me up and she would say, well, why don't we look at this verse? Do you have your Bible right there? No, I don't have my Bible right here. Well, go get it. And I would go run and get my Bible. Now turn to this. Well, wait a minute, I got to go to the index. And I'd look up the...
Where is Romans? Where is Nehemiah?
Where did Philippians go to?
It's just a few pages.
And then she was very patient, would kind of guide me into the right chapter and verse. And then she said, why don't you read that out loud? And I said, why don't you? This is your idea.
Why are you making me read it out loud when absolutely the most brilliant thing she could have done because it put the word inside you.
I had to speak it through my own lips and then decide if I was going to live in the counsel of it. And so when you read rejoice, and again I say rejoice, and you look at that, and one of the things I loved was the double rejoicing, because some of us are slow to get a grip. Rejoicing seems outside our territory, and we're not feeling like we want to rejoice. We're feeling like maybe a good argument might help things out. So, and she was a rejoicer. You know, she was a truth bearer and she was a rejoicer. I talked to her just recently. She will soon be 90.
And
She is still bringing light into the lives of other people through Bible studies. But
I can definitely hear that very huge spirit, maybe small at 20 or 21, but where you pushed back on her. And yet that very drive and spirit that grew inside, and you just became such a force in the Christian world, on stages around the world, this powerful, courageous woman from that girl.
well, I never expected the path he would take me on. He gave me a love for his word, and then he gave me a love for the words of his people. So I became an avid reader because I could gain insight through reading that would help me take baby steps. I didn't take leaps, it was little tiny steps along the way. And I never anticipated I would stand on a stage with a light on me, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, I'm sure not. But did Les, your husband, recognize you changing?
Yes, when he came to Christ, which was after I began applying scripture to my own life and stopped trying to tell, I would tell him how he ought to live, and he was living with greater freedom than I had. So it didn't even make sense. But when I gave that little bad habit up and started addressing my own issues, and he began to see progress, not just me preaching a verse at him, but me living a verse out in a way that gave light to our situation. He came to Christ in a Youth for Christ meeting, and they asked him, who is most influential in bringing you to this point? He's, without a doubt, it was my wife, because when she changed, I knew there had to be a God. And it was the truth. I was such a mess. Without a miracle, there wasn't a lot of hope for me. And even the Christians around me were amazed that any good thing came out of the condition I was in, that God really was willing to rescue someone that was that broken, and then give her hope through, well, first I opened a little Bible and bookstore in my house.
You've told me this story, and that's exactly where I was headed. Did you tell me you opened the bookstore in your garage?
It was actually in an extra room of our house. It was close to the door, and so people could come in and go right in there. And I would read the books before I sold them, because it was the only way I could feed my habit. We were very limited on resources, so I had to be creative setting this little store up. So I would remind myself, don't eat while you're reading and mess the book up.
Because I have to sell this book, and you can't underline, and you can't write your notes. Okay, so name an author in those years who really spoke to you.
I was a huge Chuck Swindoll fan, because he was funny, he loved history, and he loved Jesus.
Oh.
And I love the way he integrated all that together in everything he did. I found it very heart expanding, and it cheered me on. It made me want to rejoice and then rejoice.
Oh, I love that.
So I never dreamt that one day I would work with his sister and attend his church.
Lucy, one of your dear friends.
Yes, Lucy.
So, Patsy, you're voraciously reading, and you're reading the Bible. And this woman who couldn't get out of her bedroom now has turned a room of her house into a place where people can come and go. Was that scary?
You know, I really didn't think of it as scary at that time, which is amazing since I had very little to do with anyone. And everyone was pretty happy about that, to tell you the truth. I wasn't a great deal of fun. And I wasn't laughing. But I learned how to laugh again in the joy of the sound of it. And the people interaction, I recognized expanded my heart. And one of the ways it did that is people came in and they would be struggling. And I would say, oh, I know just the book for you. Because this one addresses that issue. And I would think, hope I didn't get me food on it. But that's how I started.
And it was so it was also a ministry. I mean, it was a very one-on-one thing, directing a person to an author to a healing, basically.
And the fact that this mess could give hope to another mess just opened up a world of possibility for me. Now, I didn't think as big as God did.
Don't you love that?
Yes. And I didn't know that I would write books.
That's what I wondered. I mean, as you were reading and just pouring into yourself, great literature, great thinking, history, and the Bible, did you begin to write?
I was writing before that, but just little scrappy pieces of paper. I would write out a thought or a feeling, but they were pretty heavy and pretty sad at that point. Later, you would see more of the change God was doing in my attitude and in my outlook.
So curious to hear you say that. I mean, here you are, a woman who has now written over 25 books. I mean, I just have to say that again. I want to write 25 books. I probably don't have enough life left to do 25 books. I can't even imagine. Did writing then become like, oh, it just spilled out of you and you wrote super fast? And
you know, every time I think I might have written something really fast, I talk to a writer who is much faster than myself. So I would say I was fairly average at the pace that I did a book. I always tried to hit my deadlines, though, and respect the publishers and their willingness to work with me. But I love the formation. I love when one word marries another word, and they live happily in a little paragraph.
yeah.
I love succinct writing.
How did you get your first book contract?
Well, I was invited by Focus on the Family. They had just started a publishing division, and they asked me if I would like to write a book for them. And the reason they asked me is a lady whom I do not know. I believe she was a Mennonite woman who heard me speak how God uses crackpots.
That's one of my favorite phrases of all time. And the title of your book, God Uses Cracked Pots.
And she called me and asked me, may I send this to Focus on the Family? And I said, well, why would you want to do that? She said, well, they might air it on their radio broadcast. And I said, well, if you want to send it, that's up to you. It took a full year, before they called me after they got it. And they said, would you like to come and write for us? And I thought, oh, they don't know that I'm a high school dropout. They don't know I'm not qualified. And so I met with the editor, and I said to her, you need to know something right off the bat. I'm not qualified to write a book. I really love that you've asked me, and I really dream of being a writer. I said, but it's a dream that's kind of scary to me because I think I'm way out of my league. And
how vulnerable, though, of you to go in and just say, hey, these are my wounded places. These are the places I might not feel worthy of doing this. I find that incredible because most people would have gotten that offer and gone in and thought, okay, I'm going to put on the aura of I can do this. I'm a writer. I really want this. Instead, you went and said, this is who I am.
Yeah, this is who I am. And so she said, well, here's what I would suggest you do is to really give God an opportunity to show you something new within yourself. And we will help you in all the places that you're not able to figure it out. And I said, well, if I agree to this, instead of you doing my rewrites, I'd like to do all my own rewrites, but I need you to tell me where I have to improve. And she said, okay, we'll do that. So I would write a short story, send it to her, and she would mark it all up with a red pen. And it looked wounded. It looked like it was bleeding. It looked like fail. And I called her up. I said, you got to use a different color.
I was going to say, a different color pen. Red doesn't get it.
So she used green.
I was going to say, life. Yep.
And I felt like, oh, look at all the places I get to grow. So
that's
I would
beautiful.
rewrite the story and send it back to her. And then she would send it back with more corrections. We'd sometimes do that 5 times on one story. And then I would get to the place where she would say, done. And I would think, I think I learned something. I'm not sure what it is, but I think I learned something. So I kept going until we had a book.
Was the first book God Uses Crackpots? Tell me about the day like you got that book in the mail or they gave it to you, your first printed copy. I mean, that's like stepping into a new dream for life.
Well, that's what I thought it would be like. That wasn't what it was
wasn't?
like. It arrived and I opened it and I took it in my hands and I was so grateful and humbled by it. But I thought, I don't feel like an author. How come I don't feel like an author? I thought, I bet you have to write 2 books to feel like an author. So we went on to do Normal's just a setting on your dryer.
I love these titles are so good. God Uses Cracked Pots. Yes, thank you. Normal's just a setting on your dryer. Good, because I don't feel like that. And then Catching Fireflies. Come on, that's so gorgeous.
Well, I used to catch fireflies.
I did
you as
too.
a child?
Oh,
Put
I
'em in
loved
a
it so
jar?
much. Yes, and now I feel bad for all of the ones I killed.
Well, and I wasn't even thinking about that then. Now we're so sensitive to it. We wouldn't be able to do
No,
what
I
we
had more
once
fun in the
did.
backyard. The moon coming out, those fireflies starting to light up, and it's it is a southern thing.
Well,
Fireflies
I can hear the ice cream
Yes.
being churned, and oh my goodness, those were good times. It was in Kentucky where my family was from. I was born and raised in Michigan. So I'm a northerner raised by southerners that is very confused. Where in the world do I belong? And so it's really exciting. I never expected to live in Tennessee, I can tell you that. I thought I would always be in Michigan.
And you stayed in the South.
Yes, I was born, raised, married, had my babies all in Michigan. So it had all the history. And my husband was born and raised in Michigan. So for us then to make the big leap and move to Tennessee seemed like it should have been really hard because I could never imagine it would happen. But it was a joy from the very beginning. This is a creative community. There is a palpable pulse. And you just know when your timing is in line with this plan.
Well, and you certainly seem to have that just wonderful, beautiful thing that Southerners pride themselves on, in that storytelling. So I want to go back to the book just for a minute. I'm not trying to linger here too long, but when did you start to feel like a writer?
Well, it wasn't after book 2, I can tell you that. And then I wrote a serious book, Under His Wings. The publishers normally would not have allowed me to do that, but Dr. Dobson's publishing was very heavy into ministry, and he limited the number of people so he could invest. So it was the right time in the right place. And after that, then I started writing more humor again. But I needed to say some words about the broken places. And
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same place. I've written this one book, and then I have this other really serious book that I've got on my laptop going, will anybody read this? I'm not a theologian. I'm not I don't understand. I don't deeply understand doctrine, but I understand the work of God in the heart. So which of your books has sold the most?
God uses crackpots.
That's what I thought. Do you know what your sales are today?
No, it was on the bestseller list for the Christian market for about 9 months.
That's incredible.
So that was very fun. I had a gal from another publishing house call me up, and she said, Patsy, I just want to be a friend to you and tell you this isn't the way it works.
Right.
So do not be surprised or disappointed if your next book doesn't do this. You don't come out of the chutes like that. So I was that was a kind and loving thing she did in preparing me. The next one did go on the charts, but not for long.
I mean, 9 months is a long time to hold that. It just doesn't happen, you know. So how did you get from writing books? And I would have to think that point of your life was just such a place of change, because you were beginning to become a public figure. You know, you were beginning to become a voice that was sought after and listened to. And especially in the female market, women were going, this woman speaks to me, right?
Yeah, and it was always a surprise to me. And every time I'd finish, I'd think, Lord, if you get me through this, I'll never do this again.
Get me through this one speech. Where was Les in all this?
Yeah, he was one of my greatest cheerleaders, and oftentimes when I would commit to a speaking engagement, when it came time, I would get so nervous, and he would just gather me up in his arms and pray the peace and power of God over me and send me on my way, or go with me. He often would go with me.
I mean, I in my mind, I'm still thinking about, you know, oftentimes traumas that happen to us in our childhoods or in our youth, things like extreme anxiety to the point that you can't leave, not even your house, but your bedroom. And then you try to speak on stage and you feel you're triggered, you know, by, oh my gosh, you know, this is the complete opposite of where I've been. It has to have been that you had a true healing for that not to have come back, you know?
Yes, it was interesting as I traveled around the country speaking. Oftentimes there would be therapists in the audience, and they would come up and they would go. Okay. We have agoraphobics in our clientele, and they're not making any progress. For you to be out here like this, we can't even grasp it. And so you need to help us understand how we can help them.
Interesting.
So that was helpful to me to understand how much God had done in me, and to rejoice, and again rejoice. But it also it was another level of how I could give back. And I just didn't expect it to be to therapists. I have a lot of therapist friends. They seem drawn to my messy life. I don't know what it is, but
Your messy, extraordinary, successful life. But I haven't asked you this before, but when you were going through all of that, you didn't have therapy. You didn't
No.
have any counsel
No.
besides Rose.
I had Rose, and then God began bringing other people into my life that would make deposit and leave. But Rose always stayed. You know, the rest were just meant to pass through. They weren't meant to stay. Okay, so, but God uses his people to help heal us. And if we isolate,
I agree with this.
we pull away from the very thing that God was going to use to give us the insights we needed. And it's not easy to get insights, because when you're so broken, it feels like criticism that you don't have a slot for, because you've had enough of it your whole life.
Right.
And so you have to get past that and begin to hear God in the conversations. And you'll know it by that nudge inside of you, that where it really strikes a chord.